What moment made you say, "Yep, this is it for me," but survived with no major injuries? I was at the end of a 2-hour journey about 10 minutes from home. Pretty rural, and I was probably complacent because I took that road every day. I took a bend at 40 miles per hour. Legal limit was 60 miles per hour, so wasn't breaking any speeding rules, which I've done many times before. Probably faster, which looking back was really reckless. Didn't see it until it was too late that a car had spun out on the other side of the corner and another car had pulled up to help. I slammed on, but I wasn't going to stop in time before hitting the cars pulled up or crashed. I was hurling straight towards the other cars and people who were standing in the road from the other crash. It was like time slowed down and I was at a crossroads. My mind had three choices: continue on my path and hit the other cars and people, veer to the right and go into a field, but there was oncoming traffic and there was a chance I'd hit them, or veer to the left and fly into a wooded area. I chose the last option. And at that moment, I knew the chances of me surviving or not being seriously injured after a 40-mile-per-hour head-on collision to a tree in a 10-year-old Ford Ka was pretty slim. I just felt a complete peace come over me, turned the wheel and woke up slumped over the steering wheel to some poor man shouting, "Oh my god, I think it's dead!" Turned out I passed out from shock or something before the impact, so when it hit the tree I was completely floppy, and this contributed to me having no serious injuries. The front of my car was completely disintegrated. After coming to, I tried to put my clutch down to take the car out of gear, out of habit, and my foot hit the tree trunk. The tree was absolutely fine. I drove past that tree every day for years after, and you could see the chunk my car took out of it. This reminds me of the scene in Kung Fu Panda when Po gets punched by Tai Lung and Po absorbs his punch and redirects the punch back to him. Glad she's safe though. Story 2. Wife was pregnant and we went away for the weekend to a house we rented in the mountains. Second day, she went to bed early and I stayed up drawing. At 3 a.m., she comes downstairs and says she's in a world of pain and is worried about the baby, 2 months before the due date. We head out and there's no cell reception. By the time we can call her doctor, we realize the time needed to get to a hospital that has the right level NICU, we might as well head back to our hospital. 2 hours later, we are there, and due to pandemic restrictions, I can't come in. It was freezing outside, and they wouldn't let me be anywhere in the hospital where I could lay down, so I talked my way into some room in the lobby and tried to sleep while sitting. Got kicked out of there and just bummed around waiting for an update. Around noon, they say they'll be keeping her for observation, but I still need to clear out from the rental. Driving back 2 hours and it starts snowing pretty hard. It's a semi-rural area, and if they do plow the snow, they haven't gone there yet. I'm being careful and fighting off sleep. The roads are super winding and high in the mountains. At some point, the car starts drifting across the double lines. I did my best to even out, but it completely got away from me. Slide through the opposite lane and continue to the shoulder. I see the ledge and realize if the car doesn't stop, I'll plummet to my demise. I have a brief moment where I think about my daughter and the kid in my wife's belly I haven't met yet. Felt like a stab in my heart, and that second went off the road completely. Fortunately, there was enough snow in the space between the ledge to trap my car. I passed out in the crash, but luckily, a couple was a minute or two behind me and their honking stabbed me out of it. They pulled me out of the car and went to get help. No service in the mountain. A couple of other people stopped, including a guy who had a big pickup. We dug the car out and rigged the rope so he was able to pull me out. Despite the pandemic, I had to be physically removed from both these guys because I was hugging them so tight. I was able to make it back to the hospital without anyone knowing. Told them after the kid was born. Sent my guardian angels pictures and $100 gift cards. As if that's adequate. Story 3. I was a senior in high school. The student club I was in organized an unofficial beach trip towards the end of the year. No teachers or official permission, leaving me and a few other seniors in charge of supervising everything. After a couple hours worth of fun, one of the other students came up running to me and said that 3 of the younger members of the club had been swept out by a riptide and couldn't get back towards the shore. Me and 2 other of the older students, all experienced swimmers, immediately went to go help them. My friends got 2 of the 3 kids in trouble and started guiding them parallel to the shore to get them out of the current, but the guy I went for was panicking, barely staying above the water, and started dragging me down with him almost immediately. I yelled for people to get a lifeguard and tried to keep both of us afloat, but after a few minutes, maybe 5, maybe 10, it felt like forever, I was getting exhausted, having trouble keeping both of us above the water, and I couldn't see anyone coming to the rescue. I started getting big mouthfuls of water and my leg muscles were starting to cramp up, and I remember thinking, holy crap, I might actually die right here, right now. As the current started pulling us further and further away from where everyone was. Thankfully for everyone involved, one of the students on the beach had flagged down a couple of surfers, made their way out to where we were as quickly as they could, and hauled first the younger student and then me onto the front of their boards and took us back to shore. I'll always be thankful and appreciative for those strangers who put themselves in the dangerous position of rescuing 2 drowning swimmers. As several people pointed out, it's not uncommon for people to die doing what I did, i.e. swimming into the water to rescue a drowning swimmer without training or equipment. There are a few techniques for rescuing someone drowning in the comments that everyone should learn if they're ever in the unfortunate situation of having to use them. I should have used them, but I was 17 and not thinking straight at the time and almost paid the price because of it. Story 4. 2 years ago, I was sleeping in my then-girlfriend's bed with her and her 2 kids. Around 3 or 4 in the morning, I heard someone walking around in the room and opened my eyes to see her ex-boyfriend. who she had left months ago but wouldn't leave her alone and let her leave him, walking to turn the light on. As he turns the light on, I see him grab a gun from behind his back. At this point, I'm thinking that he's going to just turn and end me, and I'm worried about the kids getting hit. I got to roll onto my back to get up, and as I roll, I get hit in the throat by his fist. I can't swallow for a few seconds, and I think to myself I need to calm down and try to breathe before I panic. Once I realize my windpipe isn't crushed, I sit up in the bed and tell the kids to go hide in the closet. At this point, he's screaming at me, and I'm barely awake. I get hit in the side of the head with a gun. Try my best to move with it and sit back up. Screaming continues. Girlfriend is now screaming at him to leave, and he hits me in the other side of the head. Once I sit back up again, he points the gun in my face while screaming. He finally decides that it's not worth it or something and leaves through the door he broke in from, shoots off his clip into a field across the street, and he and his friend drive off. Cops get called, and they get him not even an hour later. He's now in prison for 12 more years, and I walked away with just a bad headache the next morning. I thought I was dead the moment I saw the gun, and lucky no one was seriously hurt. The worst part of it all is the kids having to go through it and how many people tell me they would have beat him up. Dude had at least 150 pounds on me and a gun. So since some people want to make assumptions about the things that happened and that happened beforehand, I guess I have to clarify a few things. They split up a few months prior, not me knowing her for a few months. I had known for a few years before she had the kids, and I'd been in their life since they were born. I was not a stranger to anyone in that house. In fact, they knew me better than their actual father. The youngest had a nightmare and asked his mother if he could sleep with her. I'm not going to tell a child no just because some of you are uncomfortable showing love and that you care for children. They were asleep next to her, not me. They were not his kids. He was just obsessive and controlling of her. I really didn't think I needed to add a whole origin story to this thread asking about a time I thought I would die. Story 5. This reminds me of a time I dated a woman a bit older than me. She was in her mid-30s and I was in my mid-20s. She had some crazy stories from her past. Basically had been engaged 3 times. The first guy she decided to pull off the wedding literally the day before. But the worst part was her last serious relationship. She was engaged to a federal police deputy, and the best way to describe the guy is 100% psycho. It all started with minor cruelty, but eventually things were getting pretty messed up. She was the type of girl who loved to see her man jealous, so she would often try to provoke them. She tried that with me too, but to her dismay, that's not much my thing. At some point, the guy was completely pissed with her flirting with other guys in front of him. They had a discussion, things escalated, and he punched her hard in the middle of the face. After that, he kept her captive in his place for about a week. Don't remember specifics and how she was let free, but they broke up. The guy didn't take it well and started stalking and harassing her at work. Because he was a cop, he could basically force his way into the building she worked in. Nevertheless, it was a huge multinational corporation. He always managed to get in and talk to her, basically scream and call her names in the middle of a packed floor. To get away from this, she took a huge pay cut and went to work on the other side of the country, 3,500 kilometers away. She stayed there for 2 years and then came back to her home city where we would meet up. Well, from the moment she told me those stories, my biggest fear was walking up to this worthless trash human being on the street or he managing to find out where she lived. He surely had the resources to do it. The worst part is that he was a freaking police deputy. So even if I could defend myself against all odds, I'd still be pretty messed up afterwards. This and the fact that she was bat crazy made me nope the hell out of that relationship. I think I dodged a good one. Story 6. About 29 years ago, when I was around 6 years old, I went to a friend's house. My mom and I moved a lot since we were always renting, so I wasn't great friends with this kid and my mom didn't know their parents all too well. Anyway, I was upstairs in the kid's parents' room. It's just him and me in there, sitting on the floor. He asks if I want to see something cool. Obviously, I did. He pulls a box out from under his parents' bed. It was a really nice, shiny wooden box. Hefty. He had to put some strength into pulling it out. I couldn't wait to see what was inside. He opens the clasps, lifts the lid, and pulls out a revolver. I was initially curious and probably a little excited to see something I'd only seen on television. He then points the revolver directly at me. I freaked out immediately, tried to gain traction as I pushed my feet out from under me. I just fell back and kept pushing myself away from him and the gun. With my heels, my legs were jelly. I quickly ended up in the hallway at the top of the stairs and just let myself fall backwards down the stairs. I rolled to the bottom, jumped up, looked directly at his startled mother who was standing in the kitchen, none the wiser, and I bolted out the front door. As soon as I got home, I told my mom. I remember her going over to their house without me immediately after. Never played with that kid again. Since we're here already, this reminds me of this idiot I knew in high school. We were hanging out in this guy's garage. He pulls out this fake lever-action rifle where you pump air into it with what looks like the lever and then put a little BB into the chamber. If you pump it a few times, it's supposed to be like an airsoft gun and meant for target practice or teaching kids about gun safety or something. I'm not sure. But this kid starts pumping it to the point I thought it would explode in his hands. He's really struggling with the last couple. Then he sets it on the ground so it's propped up against something with a lever on the concrete and has to step on it with the full weight of his body for the last pump of air. This thing probably had the force of a .22 rifle. He points it at me and people start laughing. I grab the barrel and point it away and raise a fist with my other hand and tell him I'll beat him up if he points it at me again. Trauma. He tells some other kid to run away and he just gets up and starts running down the driveway and the kid picks the rifle up and shoots him in the butt cheek. Luckily, he actually hit there. Had to go to the immediate care. If it would have hit him in the back of the head or spine, I'm sure it would have ended him. If it would have shot into my chest, I'm sure I would have died. No one really hung out with this kid after that, and he ended up in jail for other stuff not long after high school. I was actually a really good kid when I was younger, and I would hang out at the library. A kid had a knife and pressed it up against me as a joke, and it really rattled me. I had nightmares for about a week after that. Another time, a friend pointed a gun at us as a joke. Really, really stupid. And I swear you can almost feel the tension in the area they're pointing at. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near this dude. I'm still wondering how he was able to survive after all these years, but either way, this guy is still lucky. If you wouldn't want to have the same experiences as this dude, you better hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Story 7. My friend and I just spent a few days at a beach shack. My friend just got her P plates. She was super excited, so she wanted to drive us home. This was one of her first times driving alone. Being 17, we didn't really see an issue. I rang my dad beforehand and told him I was getting a lift. He said, "I don't think you should do that. I can come pick you up. I can drive some of the girls home too. I think you guys should wait until she's had more experience." Of course, being 17, thinking I knew everything, I said it was fine and I was hopping in her car. We were on our way home playing music and chatting. There were 5 17-year-olds in this car. I was sitting behind the driver's seat. My friend pulls out into a 2-lane expressway from a country road, like an intersection. We notice she's turned the wrong way and tell her to make a U-turn. She pulls to the side and decides to go for it, through 2 lanes. She didn't check her mirrors properly and a large truck was coming up behind us. My friend got frightened and put her foot on the brake in the middle of both lanes. We were all screaming at her to keep driving, but she was frozen. I remember it was like slow motion. I looked at every single one of my friends. We all kind of shared a moment of fear, like, this is it, I guess. The exchanged looks haunt me, to be honest. We could hear the truck horn blaring at us. I looked out my window to the truck driving towards us. I locked eyes with the truck driver. Luckily, the truck stopped about 5 meters away from us. She pulled away and was really upset. The car was silent the entire way back. It was honestly the scariest moment. I'm from a really small town, and I think losing 5 people at once would really rock it. Seeing my friends' faces at the moment, it was actually horrific. I did have a moment of, okay, here comes the truck. It was oddly peaceful. After that day, I had a real understanding that I'm mortal and can go at any minute. Oh, and to trust my dad. I never told my dad. I was too scared. Also, my friends and I never spoke of the incident again. Story 8. Oh, I actually had a story that fits. I was coming home from a party at 2 a.m. in 2016 and made a conscious choice to drive through town rather than take the big highway that skirts the city limits. It would add like 10 minutes to the trip, but hey, it was the first time I'd been back in ages. That decision literally almost killed me. Not even 5 minutes after that, the 3-lane highway, really just a wide road, passed in front of a mall and there was a signal light there. Well, some drunk idiot decided to turn right into the mall from the far left lane and I was in the middle lane. I had absolutely no time to stop, so I slammed into the side of his car at 65 miles per hour. I remembered yelling, "Sweet baby Jesus!" and trying to keep control of the wheels to get the car off the road onto the grass before it blacked out for a few minutes. The airbag and the seatbelt combined had fractured my sternum, which took the air out of my lungs and made me faint, I guess. But it didn't feel like I woke up, more so like my vision came back into focus and I was aware. But those few moments, I was still kind of conscious and in immense pain. Worst I've ever felt in my life. I hurt from the skin and the soles of my feet to my scalp. Every single inch was in pain and I was like, so I'm dead? This is my body telling me I'm dead. After that, the heat hit me because my car was totaled and the engine was as hot as standing in a fire. So I was convinced my car was about to go up. It didn't. So I tried to get out, but the door was wedged shut from the crash and I started to panic. I put my back against the passenger seat and kicked the door over and over until it opened and climbed out. Every single police officer, EMT, and even the tow truck guy took one look at my car and told me, "You shouldn't have walked away from that crash at all. The fact that all you have is a fracture and some lacerations is a literal miracle." So yeah, that's how I almost died and thought for sure I was dead, but got lucky. Story 9. I own a 65 Classic Mustang, which I enjoy driving anywhere it can go. I once took it up a large mountain with a group of friends. The roads weren't steep or especially dangerous, but there was danger present because of how high it was. We made it up the mountain with no issues and stopped at a bar at the top where my friends got plastered. I didn't drink, because I was the designated driver. Before I continue, I need to clarify that the brakes on a stock Classic Mustang from the 60s era need to be primed before use. Basically, you have to hit the brakes twice before they work. On the trip down, the brakes cut out and stopped working. I primed the brakes over and over, but they didn't engage. The parking brake had been working the past month and was going to be replaced that Monday. I soon lost control of the car and we started to barrel down the road. We turned a shallow right corner and saw a long road that ended up with a sharp turn. At that moment, I thought I was going to die and take my friends with me. They had no clue they were plastered in the back. Luckily, the brakes re-engaged halfway down the road and we managed to turn the corner. It has been 4 months and I haven't touched that car. To this day, my friends have no clue what almost happened. All I can say is sweet baby Jesus. I'm glad everyone from the stories are safe. If you thought these lucky escapes were crazy, get ready for more in the next video. Doctors, what made you say, how are you still alive? Story 1 will leave you speechless. See you there.